Hey folks, Malforian here, and today it is Wednesday, so it is a Tinto Talks day, and this week Johan's going to be talking to us about how exploration is going to work in EU5. Now, unfortunately, it isn't going to match what I was talking about last week. If you aren't aware, I did a video called I've Got Exploration Ideas for EU5. I will leave a link to it in the description down below, and I had an idea of how this could work, how you could send off expeditions, and then you would only find out what they did once they got back to you, and things like that. I won't go through it all here. You can watch the video if you are interested. But we are going to get an evolution, I think, of how it worked in EU4. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. A pretty short dev diary this week, but a lot of information in there so we know how this is going to work in the future. And as Johan starts saying here, in previous grand strategy games they've done, exploration has primarily been done through units, giving them manual orders to move or sometimes automated orders to explore places on the map to reveal. And that is how it kind of works in EU4, to be honest. Especially if you have the El Dorado, I think it was, DLC, where they changed how ship-based exploration especially works, where you can no longer just move your units and remove the fog of war. You had to do the exploration option, where you would choose, like, the Caribbean, and your ships would, like, automatically go to the Caribbean area of the map, do some exploration, come back, and then maybe you would have discovered a bit of the east coast of America, and then you would get like Eastern American coastline, and then you would send them to do that, and they would come back. It sounds like we are getting a version of this, although as Johan says, it is going to work slightly differently on how it costs you gold and things like that. So exploration in EU5 is going to work entirely on areas, and for those of you who don't remember, in one of the earliest Tinto Talks, I think this was the second one, the third one, where they kind of showed off how the geography of the actual map is going to work. And that is an area is a group of provinces, and provinces contain a group of locations. So if you play like Crusader Kings, I guess think of locations as counties. A province is like a duchy, and an area is almost like a kingdom-sized area of the map. It's not exactly how it works, but think of it that way pretty much. Like you have the smaller areas, then the larger grouping, and then the even larger grouping on top of that. So that's how I always think of it. It doesn't perfectly match, but I think it helps you kind of understand how this works. And that is going to be roughly 25 to 75 locations. Again, like in Crusader Kings, where you have some kingdoms and empires that are very big and some that are very small. Thinking of like the Isle of Man, which is one county, one duchy, just on one location. And then you have some kingdoms like France, which are a lot of locations as well. So that is how I kind of keep it in my mind. And then explorations themselves, they exist on the geopolitics tab, and you can see that at the moment on here, together with colonization, maritime, and privateering. So it does sound like privateering is going to be a whole section now of the UI, and it's going to work differently to how it works in EU4. We'll get a lot more information in the future about that. I wonder if you can actually target privateering a little bit more now in EU5. It's been brought up here and there, but he hasn't discussed it at all, so I guess that's going to be a future dev diary. And as we can see, looking at this, you've got the known world, 24%, the naval range that you have, so similar to EU4. Exploration cost, we're going to cover some of that later on. Exploration progress, again, that's going to be covered. And exploration failure as well. Now, this does look like it's going to work slightly different to EU4, where in EU4, it was basically just your attrition of your ship units. If they ever hit zero, the fleet was just lost. But it does look like in EU5, there is just going to be a random chance every month, by the looks of it, that the fleet can be lost, even if it's like fully stocked up and ready to go. You can also see the colonial charters. That's going to be for your colonization. Colonial migration, I guess how strong of a pull it is. Now we have population in the game, how much of a pull it is to drag people over to the new world once it's going. And then the cost of colonies. All of this is going to be covered, I believe Johan said in September is when we're going to get colonization talked about, but there is a little bit of a sneak peek here for us. And then as you can see, the main part is the exploration tab. You can recruit explorers. That isn't going away, although it is going to work slightly differently. And then you can see a guy here with a mighty fine helmet on him, and he is exploring the Madeira Sea, and that is 0 out of 6 completed. I believe how it's going to work is once it hits 6, that is going to be fully explored. Now, one thing they don't talk about is whether you get the map as the ships explore it, or whether it is going to work how I hoped it would work, where you only got the map once they came back to you. I think that would work so much better. I'm sure people wouldn't like it, because it does look like these are going to be pretty expensive to run, so I'm sure some people would be mad about paying for all this money. You send the ships off and then they just get lost at sea and you never find any of the map out. And you have to do it again. I did cover that in the video, so we won't go into it too much here, but I think that would be a cool way for it to work. But it looks like that's probably just like the full exploration, so you can keep track of it. And then you can see, I guess, the progress towards that full exploration is 0.15. Then you've got 68.22. They're going to cover late in the dev diary what that is. 0.97 is how much it costs per month in ducats. And then January 1341, I guess that's when it's going to be finished by the looks of it. So that is when the ships will come back to you. As you can see from the Azores, Western Sahara, these are quite long, 33 months, 37 months. So it does look like this is going to take a lot longer than it did in EU4, where the exploration was relatively quick, to be honest. You could pretty much explore everywhere in a couple of years. Well, you know, not everywhere, but if you were heading to America, you could discover a lot of it pretty quickly once you got going. But it looks like that is how this is going to work from what we can see. And then we're into the basics of how this works. So to get an area explored, you need to start an exploration for it. I think that does make sense, doesn't it? You can only explore it if it is adjacent to an area that you already own. So that does sound like it's going to work, I guess, slightly different. I wonder if that's to stop you just beelining for somewhere. Starting an exploration mission for an area costs a significant amount of gold. Now, that wasn't shown above. We only saw how much it costs per month to keep it going. And I don't think it's mentioned anywhere in here, the actual upfront cost, although I'm sure that will be balanced, so it doesn't really matter, to be honest. But it does look like you actually have to spend some money up front. It's not just having some ships, having an explorer, and then sending them off like you do in EU4. You actually have to fund these missions now, which is cool. I do like that change. Again, it kind of goes towards some of the things I talked of in that video. I do like this change where you have to put money up to do these explorations, and it isn't just you've got 3 ships and an explorer, you're good to go. I think this is much more of a historically accurate way for it to work, and I much prefer this to the way it does work in EU4. And then as Johan's mentioned, and we have already seen, and then he does call out here, there is an additional cost depending if it is a land area or a sea area. I guess the sea area is probably more expensive. I wonder if they have the land one work a little bit cheaper because you could be like scavenging food and things whilst you're exploring. So I wonder if that's the cheaper version of it. For land area, you do need manpower, and for sea areas, you need sailors. Not sure how that's going to work. I'm not sure about that, to be honest. Although I guess it's like you have the explorer, and then maybe you need to have like 3,000 sailors, and then you send them off as like a combined fleet. And that is what that means. I presume that's the case. I can't imagine you need a certain amount of manpower to do them or something. I think it's you'll need a certain block of manpower, and then they get depleted whilst they're off doing the exploration. And then as we've seen, you also have that upkeep cost as well. I wonder if that affects the failure chance, like if you stop paying them or if you cut back. So maybe they're asking for a gold a month and you do half a gold a month. Maybe that increases the chance of it failing. I would imagine that is how it's going to work. And then also on top of that, you are going to get events related to exploration. So I wonder if we get like the Lost City of Gold, maybe Fountain of Youth or something like that. We're going to get these different events that happen. I guess like natives and things like that. And maybe you can bump into other fleets and things like that. That would be interesting if you had some events where, if you're the English, you maybe bumped into some French explorers. Maybe you could be hostile to them. Maybe you could help them out. Maybe you find like lost colonies of other nations. That would be amazing. I don't think we will get that, but that would be awesome if something like that was available as well. And then Johan does actually go on to say these missions have a chance to increase the risk of failure, reset all progress, and the characters involved can die as well. So I guess that can kill off your explorer. Now, resetting all progress, I think that might mean that you don't get the map until they come back to you, because otherwise, what would that do? Resetting all progress? Like if you were shown the map as they progress, like you do in EU4, where if you send them to like the American coast, you can watch the ship. It is automated, but you can see the ship and it gradually shows you the map as it moves around. If it resets all progress, how would that work if it was going to show you the map as the exploration progressed? I think that means you won't get shown the map until they get back to you, which would be an amazing change. I think that is awesome. I think it makes exploration way more interesting, even though you know the map. Obviously, we all know the map of the world, or I guess most of us do. I think something like this would bring back at least a little bit of like, I don't know, like excitement. Maybe not excitement, but some interest in the exploration of the map. Currently in EU4, you know where everything is, and it's so easy to do. It's almost like a pointless system in a way. It's basically there just to delay you colonizing the new world. Whereas I think if it works like this, and I don't know from the wording here, I think it might do just the resetting all progress. Like if you're 75% done, if you lost the fleet, how would that be resetting all progress? Because you just send a new fleet and finish the other 25%. I think that means you don't get shown the map. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. We won't get too kind of caught up with it, but I think that's what that must mean, because otherwise I don't understand what it would lean towards. Although do let me know again, if it means something and I'm just being totally blind to it at the moment, do let me know. But we're saying all progress, because even if it was like 75% and then it went down to 0%, but you could still see 75% of the area explored, I don't think that wording kind of fits well. I don't know. we'll see in the future, I'm sure. Or to be honest, Johan will probably talk about it in the comments and we'll cover it Friday's video. Anyway, the administrative ability of the leader of the expedition reduces its upkeep cost, while diplomatic ability impacts the success chance and military ability impacts how quickly the exploration can be done. This is obviously calling back to when they covered about characters, and all characters in the game are going to have admin, diplomacy, and a military kind of score on how good they are in those fields. And at the time in that dev diary, some people asked, like, why do all characters have these? And they did mention, well, it hooks into different systems for non-ruler characters. And Johan does mention that next week we're going to get military information finally. And I imagine it is going to hook into that as well. It would make sense that the three things affect that as well in a pretty good way. This is Mateus's abilities as an explorer. While serving as an explorer, the abilities of Mateus have the following effects. So his admin ability of 8, which is pretty bad because it is out of 100. Exploration cost is minus 2.4%. So I guess if it's like 50, 75, he's actually going to reduce the cost quite a bit. Diplomatic ability 3. That is yearly chance of failure, 0.09 improvement. So again, if that's like 100, he's going to be a very good explorer. And military ability, he is 51, so pretty good at that. Exploration monthly progress, 0.10. That, as he said, is going to speed it on a little bit. I wish they kind of showed another one, somebody who was good at the other two, but I guess we can kind of extrapolate from this how much it would affect them. And I do like Johan's comment here. Incompetent at a lot in life, Mateus's redeeming quality is that he failed very quickly. So that is true. Looking at his stats, he's quick at doing stuff. He's just very bad at doing that thing. So I do like that comment. It did give me a chuckle. While most characters in the game can be assigned to explore an area, there are some characters that are far superior, and they are obviously going to be called explorers. They're people that kind of focused on it. And besides just being innately better at exploring, they also have different unique traits, making them better or worse at certain aspects of exploring. Oh, so that's cool. So it isn't just the 3 stats. These explorer characters also are going to have specific traits affecting exploration as well. That is cool, another layer on this system. While there are some explorers that will join certain countries through historical events, there is also the possibility to just recruit a new explorer. This requires the Commission Explorers advance in the Age of Discovery that is early in the advances tree for the New World Institution. This might cover what Johan said a couple of weeks ago, that you can explore the New World without the New World Institution. It would just be way harder than if you did have it. And I guess this is why, because you can get these explorers through the Institution New World if you get one of the advances, which you're probably going to pick up relatively quickly if you are doing this. And I guess these traits are going to be so good, they're going to make the failure chance especially, I guess, a lot less. I wonder if you do try explore the New World without this, the failure chance is going to be so high, it's actually pretty difficult to actually complete a exploration path. Whereas having these is just going to make it so much easier. And that is why you will want to go down this institution and then pick up these advances as well. We don't get much information about the advances, which is unfortunate. I think it would have been cool to see some more of these, but maybe they've not finished them, or they're probably saving them for a later dev diary, which will go into more detail on these systems. Speaking of advances, there are a few advances throughout the game that speed up explorations and make them less prone to failure, as we just thought. At the start of the game, at near range, an exploration led by someone who is not an explorer may take a few years to complete, but as you get more advanced, it will become quicker over time. Again, this follows like historically, where the first major explorations like this took a long time, a lot of money, a lot of chance of failure, and then as people got more kind of experienced in this, it did reduce the time. People were better at it. They knew roughly where things were, and it did speed things up, and that is how we're going to see that played out in the game as well. The next thing they're going to talk about is trade winds. Now, I'm going to put a picture up here that Johan did leave in one of his early comments. Now, I usually leave these to the Friday video, but this one is important, and it is mentioned in the dev diary. So as you can see, there are going to be trade winds on sea lanes that have a significant impact on how quickly an area can be explored. They have designed the oceanic locations of Project Caesar to take into account the historical sea lanes, and that's what you can see at the moment, that were used by ships and fleets during the Age of Sail. Taking advantage of their knowledge of the winds and sea currents, these sea lanes shaped the way exploration was done, and their mastery was critical to the success and failure of an expedition. Now, we don't get any information about how this actually improves it. I imagine it's going to work historically, where some of the currents help you go west, some help you go east, and I imagine when you click on them, it will show you, like, heading west or something will be X amount faster. One of the northern routes maybe is going to be heading east towards Europe. You will travel X faster if you take this route. It would be cool if there was like dynamic events that happen, like storms or something like that, where the storms, maybe even like ice flows or something like that, where temporarily it would slow that down, or maybe even not like reverse it because they are the sea and ocean currents, but it would be cool if you had these kind of temporary events where it was affected by them and you couldn't always guarantee it was going to work a certain way. We might get that, but it wasn't mentioned in the dev diary at all. And then speaking of advances, Johan did actually show one off here. All Western Europe subcontinent countries in the Age of Renaissance will get this specific advance, and it is purple. We did think last week any that had this purple colour to them were the standalone extra ones that certain cultures, countries, and things like that will get. And this is the first one we have like fully confirmed just in a dev diary itself. And this is showing the Western Europe ones. They get route to the Indies, yearly failure, chance of exploration -1%. So not a massive bonus, but it is a cool little bonus if you are in these areas of the map that historically led the major exploration of the New World. So that is the first one called out. It is pretty cool. I like that. It's not too crazy, but it is a flavorful improvement if you are playing in those areas. And that covers basically how all the exploration pretty much works. Now, they do mention here that spy networks are returning and that you can steal the maps of other nations. This was available in EU4. I imagine as well you're going to be able to trade for their maps as well, I would think. I'd be very surprised if you couldn't do that. But again, Johan just confirming you can steal maps from elsewhere. So if you don't want to spend all the money to do exploration, you can just steal them. Or if you're in a very good alliance or something, you might be able to just get them to maybe give them to you or at least trade money or something else for them as well. So you don't have to explore it yourself. There are these other avenues to do it. And then as exploration missions are finished, the knowledge of its discoveries will start spreading to other countries that have a capital in the same subcontinent as the explorer. Currently, the map takes about 150 years. So again, this is something that is in EU4, and that is coming back here. So even if, say, Portugal finds the New World, if nobody else explored the New World, the knowledge of it existing and rough maps and things like that are going to spread out from there. Again, this is how it works in EU4, and it is coming back in EU5. This makes sense. Historically, obviously, not all the countries of Europe explored the New World, but they knew about it because they heard stories from the nations who did, and the explorers and things like that. So that is coming back, so you don't have to do exploration to actually see the full map in all its glory. And with that, that is the end of the dev diary for this week. As I said, Johan is going to talk next week about combat for armies and how that is going to work. I think that will showcase again how the different stats are going to affect another area of the game, how commanders are going to work, how these generals are going to affect your combat, I would think. And then also, I guess we might get a bit of a breakdown of maybe the units we might see, or at least a rough breakdown of the different units progressing through the game. Because again, this game covers more history than EU4, so we will hopefully see more units than we did in EU4, and a bit more variety I think would be cool as well. But with that, we'll leave it there for today. As I said, if you're intrigued about my ideas of how exploration should have worked, I will leave a link to that video in the description down below. But hit like if you've enjoyed the video today. It helps other people find the channel and the videos in the future. And if you are new here, I'm covering EU5 up to official announcement, launch and beyond. And I cover Crusader Kings 3 in a very similar manner. So if you've enjoyed this, there's plenty more coming in the future, but we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.